Well, hello, New York, and welcome to Legislative Day 2022, a digital day of action. Well, we miss your presence in Albany this year, but we're thankful that you're joining us online. Now, I appreciate the fact that you're tuning in today's program, as some of you may not be familiar with our organization, what we do, or what Legislative Day is. Well, our vision is a state and a nation where God is honored, where religious freedom flourishes, where families thrive, and life is cherished. And so we exist to influence legislation and legislators for the Lord Jesus Christ. Legislatively, we want to protect human life, promote strong families, preserve religious liberty, and proclaim the biblical concepts of justice and mercy. Normally, on the third Tuesday in March, we'd be welcoming 12 to 1,500 to the Capitol. It's our largest in-person event of the year. Unfortunately, due to COVID restrictions, the last two legislative days were not allowed to be had, and even today the Capitol has just reopened, allowing no time to prepare for an event today. And so starting last year, we took our Legislative Day event online with a digital day of action. And so to those of you who are participating today, know that your efforts make a difference. Last year, during the Digital Day of Action, there were 4 issues that we were focused on. One was protecting pro-life pregnancy centers from Planned Parenthood's political allies. The second, well, that dealt with promoting strong families and trying to protect children from a mandatory sex ed program that offered them all sorts of bad sex ed that was not age appropriate. And the third thing in our preserving religious liberty agenda was protecting the rights of private faith-based schools to teach according to the tenets of the scripture rather than what the state was dictating to them to teach. And the fourth, dealing with our biblical concepts of justice and mercy agenda, well, we were advocating for a piece of legislation known as Nourish New York that really was a great help for food pantries and families in need across the state. Well, last year you were so active in our digital day of action that I'm pleased to tell you that we were successful in all 4 of those things. The first 3 things we were trying to block were all blocked. And the fourth one that we were trying to advance, that Nourish New York program, well, it was signed into law by Governor Kathy Hochul. And so on all 4 of those issues, last year's Digital Day of Action was a tremendous success. And now we're back this year with 4 more issues that we need to make a difference in. And I want to thank you for participating and helping to do some positive things in our state. Now, as we think about today's program and what it's going to look like, essentially you're going to watch a broadcast today. It's going to be about an hour long. And at the end of that broadcast, you're going to receive a series of emails starting at 10:30 today. At 10:30 in the morning, you'll receive an email. You'll receive another email at 12:30, another at 2:30, and another at 4:30. And each of those emails will have a series of action steps pertinent to one of the issues we're discussing on this program. And I hope that you will click on each of those action items and help us to accomplish some great things in the state of New York. Now, the first thing that we do want to talk about today regarding the issues is really looking at that protecting human life agenda. There is an issue right now in which Governor Kathy Hochul is seeking to mandate abortion insurance coverage in the state budget. And Stephen Hayford is here to tell us a little more about that particular issue. Here's our Legislative Director, Stephen Hayford.
As a pro-life Christian organization, New Yorkers for Constitutional Freedoms promotes public policies that protect human life. For our 2022 Digital Day of Action, our pro-life policy focus involves opposition to a budget bill that would require health insurance policies to cover abortion. Sadly, the state of New York already requires employers to include abortion in their employee health insurance coverage. That insurance mandate is the subject of ongoing litigation. However, the state's current insurance mandate is not required by law. Governor Kathy Hochul's budget proposal would change that. Since taking office as governor, Governor Hochul has employed abortion rhetoric that is extreme, aggressive, and inflamed. Referring to the pro-life Texas heartbeat law passed last year, the governor has said that years ago, she had no idea that her daughter's so-called abortion rights would be, quote, threatened by crazy people in places like Texas, end quote. Governor Hochul has also linked the quote-unquote right to abortion to the Statue of Liberty, stating, quote, "In 1886, they erected a beautiful woman in our harbor with her hand held high with a torch in it, a beacon of hope for people who are oppressed." The governor went on, quote, "We have oppression going on in our own country when people are trying to tell women what to do with their own bodies. It stops here in New York. Let's take this battle all across the nation," end quote. Apparently, Governor Hochul is not satisfied with the Reproductive Health Act, the notorious abortion expansion law that Governor Andrew Cuomo signed in 2019. She wants to go further. The governor's budget would require health insurance policies issued in New York to include abortion coverage. Such coverage would not be subject to co-insurance, co-payments, or deductibles, except in the case of high-deductible plans. While the budget bill contains an exemption for religious employers, that exemption is woefully inadequate. It would only apply to churches, associations of churches, and religious orders. Furthermore, even if an employer qualified for the religious exemption, the budget bill would require insurers to provide an abortion rider to that employer's employees. Pro-life New Yorkers must do all that we can to avoid letting the governor's budget bill pass in its current form. Please contact your state legislators today and ask them to push for the abortion insurance coverage mandate to be removed from this year's budget proposal.
Thank you, Steve, and I certainly appreciate that. Now, if I can offer you a little update regarding what's going on with the budget. The New York State budget is due by April 1st. And so we really are in a mode right now to where the governor has put forward her proposed budget, and then each chamber of the legislature, the state senate and the state assembly, will put forward their versions of the budget. And then the haggling will begin. Well, since Stephen's legislative update was recorded last Friday, only a few days ago, the budgets have been introduced. Governor Kathy Hochul, of course, had the abortion mandate coverage in her budget. The Senate included some abortion language in its budget, but the Assembly, curiously, had it removed, intentionally omitted from its budget. And there's a couple of reasons why that could be. It could be that the State Assembly is simply going to work with the language a little more and then reintroduce that. Or it could be that the Assembly is doing what it said it would do, and it's taking policy out of the state budget. Certainly this is a policy issue that should not be placed into the mammoth budget bill, but it has been by the governor and the state senate. And so we're praying and we're working towards getting abortion mandate insurance coverage out of the state budget. And so today, you're going to get that email indicating how you can take action. Thanks for taking part in that. You know, I mentioned this was our largest in-person event when we're in Albany. We trust that today will be a great event as well as you watch online. But it's also our largest fundraising event of the year. And so if you're watching today and you'd like to support the work that we're involved in, I would encourage you to donate at newyorkfamilies.org/donate. Today's goal is to raise $25,000 for our organizational needs. And that's entirely possible as people all across the state are participating in a very active way. So thank you for giving to support the ministry of New Yorkers Family Research Foundation, our educational arm, and New Yorkers for Constitutional Freedoms, our government relations arm. Now, the next issue that we have to cover today is dealing with our Promoting Strong Families agenda. And I'm hearing from families all across the state that they are very concerned about a vaccine mandate for school attendance. And so here today we have Stephen Hayford again, our legislative director, to fill us in more on that issue.
As a Christian organization, New Yorkers for Constitutional Freedoms supports public policies that promote strong families. For the 2022 Digital Day of Action, we are highlighting our opposition to an anti-family proposal that would require students in New York schools to receive COVID-19 vaccinations. Last December, Governor Kathy Hochul stated that she wanted a COVID-19 vaccination mandate for students to go into effect for the 2022-2023 school year. A bill introduced by Assemblymember Jeffrey Dinowitz would create such a mandate and would cause that mandate to go into effect 30 days after a COVID-19 vaccine has received full approval from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. Currently, the FDA has only issued an emergency authorization for COVID-19 vaccines in children ages 5 through 11. Mandating COVID-19 vaccination for students would take a sensitive and controversial decision out of parents' hands and place that decision in the hands of the state. Some New Yorkers have religious objections to COVID-19 vaccination. Others are concerned that the long-term effects of the vaccine are not yet known. The state should respect parents' authority in their children's lives. Also, the progress being made to combat the COVID-19 pandemic may make a vaccination mandate obsolete by September of 2022. Rather than taking a drastic premature step that encroaches upon the authority of parents, the state should take a wait-and-see approach that emphasizes education and guidance instead of top-down requirements. Please contact your elected officials today and urge them to oppose a COVID-19 vaccination mandate for New York students.
Stephen, thank you for telling us more about that. I know, again, parents are very concerned about this. It's one of the most called in requests for information we're receiving here at the organization is regarding those vaccine mandates. And I know that parents at both public and private schools are concerned about what it would mean if their children are facing a vaccine mandate for COVID under this school attendance bill. So we're working to block that. I believe we can be successful. Here's why. You know, even though there are many legislators who would vote for this, it's an election year. And in an election year, well, elected officials are more inclined to listen to what constituents have to say. And so as you are active on social media, and as you are sending messages to the legislature, as you're retweeting opposition to that assembly bill and to others that deal with this issue, well, you can help raise the awareness of this issue and make it uncomfortable for elected officials who don't really want to have to take a hard vote this year. And so even if they personally would vote for this any other time, just before an election, they may not want to do so. And so I would encourage you to have the proper tone and tenor, really be respectful and carry yourself well when you do these forms of messaging, but you can still be firm. And you can let elected officials know that you're concerned about these issues. And so please, when you receive that email, take action, get involved today. Now, there are a number of ways that you can stay informed regarding what's going on in New York State, and particularly with the issues that we're watching. And one of the first things I would encourage you to do is to subscribe to receive our weekly Albany Update email. You can subscribe at albanyupdate/subscribe, or you can text the word freedom to 22828. By visiting either that website, albanyupdate.com/subscribe, or texting the word freedom to 22828, you can be one of the most informed voters in New York as you know what's going on in this state from a distinctly Christian perspective. And then there are two other things you can do as well. First, you can actually receive our podcast. You can listen to them on your preferred podcasting platform, or just go to our website and be able to listen to those podcasts. We're on Christian radio across the state of New York, but you can also get them on demand at albanyupdate.com/podcasts. We listen, and you can have that podcast available on iHeart and Spotify, iTunes, and others. It's also available in our app. And so if you'd like to check out our mobile app, just search in your app store for Albany Update. You can listen to the podcasts on there as well. Those are three ways that you can be informed. And now we have an opportunity to share with you really what I think is going to be a key interview. Our organization is committed to educating voters so they can be informed and they can go out there and make a difference with their vote. And what most voters may not realize is that there's a June 28th primary sneaking up on us. There are many, many seats that are up for election this year. You've got the governor's race, you've got the attorney general, you've got, the comptroller's race, state legislative races. You've got all sorts of things on the ballot this year. And so I just want to encourage you to be an informed voter. And one of the ways we want to encourage you to do that and help inform you is to provide candidate interviews where you can hear from the candidates and you can begin to hear where they are in some of the issues. Now, regarding the governor's race, there are two candidates that have already qualified to be on that June 28th primary ballot. The first is Governor Kathy Hochul, and she is welcome to come on and sit down for an interview at any time. I'd love to talk to her about some of the issues, and we'll be more formally extending an offer to her as well to make sure that can happen if she'll accept that offer. But the Republican candidate that is already qualified is Congressman Lee Zeldin, and I want to provide an interview for you with Congressman Lee Zeldin. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to interview Congressman Lee Zeldin today. Congressman Zeldin grew up in Suffolk County, New York. Representative Zeldin graduated from the State University of New York in Albany and then Albany Law School, becoming New York's youngest attorney at the time of age 23. After completing the Army ROTC program, Mr. Zeldin served 4 years in active duty. Then in 2006, while assigned to the Army's 82nd Airborne Division, he was deployed to Iraq in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. Following his service on active duty in 2007, Congressman Zeldin transitioned from active duty to the Army Reserve, where he currently serves as Lieutenant Colonel. In 2008, Congressman Zeldin opened a law practice in Smithtown, New York, which he operated full-time until he was elected to the New York State Senate in 2010, representing New York's 3rd Senate District. In 2014, following 4 years in the state Senate, Representative Zeldin was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives, representing New York's 1st Congressional District. There, he serves on 2 committees, Financial Services and Foreign Affairs, where he serves as ranking member of the subcommittee on Oversight and Investigations. Congressman Zeldin resides in his hometown of Shirley with his wife Diana and their twin daughters Michaela and Ariana. Representative Zeldin is also running for governor of New York as the nominee of both the state Republican and Conservative parties. Mr. Zeldin is the first of the gubernatorial candidates to qualify for a place on the June 28th primary ballot. As such, we have invited him to our offices to participate in our candidate series. We'll be providing opportunities for other officially qualified candidates to come in and share their thoughts about their candidacy and the Empire State in the weeks to come leading up to that June 28th primary. We hope these interviews help you be an informed voter. Now, on to my interview with Congressman Lee Zeldin. Well, Congressman, it's good to have you in the office today. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, great to be with you.
Well, we've been enjoying and watching what's been happening with your race as you're working your way around the state. And today you're in Rochester, New York, so it's a great opportunity to have you here at the office. In the bio that I just shared, we mentioned your wife and your daughters, Diana, and then the daughters, Michaela and Ariana. And I know that when you were with us some years ago, you really shared a pretty touching story with your daughters. And I love to hear our audience connect with your family and know how they can pray for them and just be thinking of them. Would you mind recounting that tale for us?
Sure. My daughters, Michaela and Ariana, were born 14 and a half weeks early. They were less than 1.5 pounds when they were born. And I remember Diana going into labor in her 22nd week. And the doctors at Georgetown University NICU managed to keep the babies in her for about 3 weeks. So in the 25th week, they were born. First couple weeks, they both had lung surgery, intestinal surgery. When Michaela was about 2 weeks old, she weighed 2 pounds and she had an extra pound of fluid. She went into septic shock, and that has about an 80 to 90% mortality rate for her. While she was in septic shock, she had a stroke, and she wasn't doing well. Doctors sat Diana and I down and recommended that we discontinue treatment and that we let her go. They said, if she survives, she won't be able to see, walk, talk, and she'll have cerebral palsy. They weren't saying maybe, they said this is what's going to happen. Diana decided to, and we talked about it, we figured if she wasn't getting any better, but she wasn't getting any worse, she's clearly fighting. If she's going to fight, we're going to fight too. And we elected to do a very risky brain surgery on her. Diana and I went and said goodbye. We didn't know if we were ever going to see her again. We're in the waiting room. I remember the doctors, vividly remember, I'll never forget. The doctors come and they say that things went better than expected. She's not out of the woods, but it went better than expected. I remember Diana and I high-fiving each other. And the whole surgery, the whole incident left 1/3 of the left side of her brain a hole. But what's interesting is because she was only 2 weeks along, it's 27 weeks of brain development. The brain is still in many ways growing, and it recircuited itself around the hole. So she ended up with no long-term effects of what happened. She went to early intervention, the power of prayer, her will to live, I would say the girl's will to live, because Ariana went through a lot as well, and the miracles of modern medicine collectively. Now they're 15, they're finishing up 10th grade, they're doing really well, they're in all honors classes, getting better grades than I did when I was their age. And thank God for her fight, and the fact that we just decided to put all of our faith in her and in that great team, and that she's now able to live. I was able to see life in the second trimester. And as we talk about these issues, it couldn't possibly be more personal for me, and to be able to share that personal story of what it's like to see a baby who's so small that their entire hand is smaller than the top third of your finger changed my life. And thank God Michaela and Ariana are still with us today. They're fighting, doing very well, and soon we'll be looking at college, and unfortunately very soon they're going to be driving.
Well, it's funny how, we think about those moments that make a man. And certainly I think that was one of those in your life, that your values, which had always been there, became that much more solidified through that experience that you've gone through. It was fun for me because to be at an event with you and your family not too many weeks ago, to meet them for the first time. I have prayed for them for many years, and I pray for you and your family. And to actually be able to meet them and to see the girls and meet your wife Diana, and just be able to put some flesh on names I've been praying for a lot of years was pretty exciting for me.
Thank you for all those prayers through the years.
Yeah. Well, let's get to some of the issues. So speaking of parents and parental rights, certainly here in New York there's been a lot going on. What can we anticipate as a parent in the Zeldin administration? What would parents be expecting from your administration in the years to come?
Parents have a fundamental right to control the upbringing of their child. Government needs to protect and defend that right and not infringe upon it. A decision by parents to send their kids off to school does not in any way relinquish that right. Some in government and education believe that if you send your kid off to school, that you're no longer in charge of the upbringing of your child. Now, when you push back on it, some on the left will say, well, if you feel that strongly, then you should homeschool your kid. Now, if you choose to homeschool your kid, that's fine. There's many different ways that our kids get educated around this entire state. But for some parents, you make the decision to send your kid off to school. Maybe you can't do it with work. Maybe you want your kid to be around other kids in that type of a school setting. That's a personal decision. I believe that parents should be as involved as possible in their kids' education. The best thing for a kid is for a parent to be as actively involved in their son and daughter's education as possible. I believe that the best thing for a kid's upbringing is for a parental unit to be as strong as possible. So as far as education goes, I very strongly believe that there's far more that we must be doing to have parents as involved as possible in their kids' education.
I remember some years ago, when you were a new state senator at that time, and I remember I was a new lobbyist coming to Albany, and I was sitting up in the Senate gallery, and I remember watching the floor, and there were senators that were moving around, and it wasn't uncommon for a senator who'd been around for a few years to point to me to come down to have a word with them, and I would go down to the floor where they're at. But I remember this particular day because all of a sudden I felt a tap on the back of the shoulder, and it was you. You would actually come up to the gallery to talk to me about a school choice issue. And first, let me just say, I was so impressed with that you as a state senator would come up to the gallery to where I was to speak with me rather than just call for me or beckon me to come down. So I appreciate that, and I think that has spoken really of your humble heart. So many years ago, I think of that story often. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm the fourth ranking member of my house. I still serve in the Army Reserve, and I'm outranked by a bunch of people in the military. Constituents keep me grounded and honest. I remember when I first got elected to the state senate during orientation, somebody shared this story with me, and the group of all the senators who had just got elected, they say, you all may feel important and people will call you senator and doors will get open for you that weren't previously open, but just keep in mind that one day you're not going to be here anymore. Yeah. And the day after you leave, someone's going to scrape the plaque off the outside of your door and no one's going to ever remember who you are. Okay, that puts some perspective on it. We're all people, we're blessed to be on this earth, to have life where we're all equals. All of us are equals. There's so many ranks that get thrown around and titles, and I understand when you're trying to accomplish a goal that it's good to have structure and dialogue and a chain of command, and I mean, I'm from the military, so I certainly respect and appreciate that. Some people, though, it gets to their head because they're empowered with a position that comes with more title, more responsibility in a particular situation, that somehow that makes them a better person. It doesn't make you a better person. You're still equals. You just have the honor, the privilege of being in that leadership position.
Yeah. Well, on that day, the topic that we talked about was school choice. And I'm still talking about school choice today, so I want to talk about a little more today. Two things. One, we mentioned the vaccine mandates, and not too many years ago, New Yorkers, even under private schools, lost the religious exemptions to vaccine mandates. Is that something that in the Zeldin administration would get a second look?
Yeah, the religious exemption should have never disappeared. It should come back. I don't believe that the COVID shot should be required in order to attend school in the fall. That's a bill that's being considered right now up in Albany. I believe all COVID mandates should end. I believe that everyone who lost their job due to COVID should get their jobs back with back pay. Right now, as you and I are having this conversation, if you're under 5 years old in New York City, you're wearing a mask all day long still. I mentioned earlier about how my daughter Michaela was going through early intervention. We have kids, they're on the autism spectrum, they're learning how to speak, they're 3, they're 4 years old. The idea that the parent can't see the kid speak, their face, the kid can't see the teacher's face, the kid can't see other kids' face, it just doesn't add up as far as what's best for that student who's going through so much so young to be able to catch up to their peers. The idea that they would go through that whole experience all messed up doesn't make sense. With the teacher, student should be able to see each other's face when you learn how to talk. I believe in school choice. I don't want to hold any type of form of education back. Whatever decision a parent makes to send their kid off to school, I want that schooling to be as set up for success as possible. If you homeschool your kid, you should be set up for success as much as possible. You want to go off to public school? That's fine. I went to a public school. My daughters go to the same public school I went to. We have kids stuck in multi-generational poverty, stuck in poor performing schools. I believe that we should lift the cap on charter schools in this state. We should have educational savings accounts and tax credits for school choice and school vouchers, and we should provide every last possible opportunity for every student in this state, regardless of where you live, your wealth, your race, your ethnicity, anything. Everybody should be given the best possible chance for success. This isn't about the teachers union. It's not about the government. It's first and foremost, nothing is more important than that kid. And unfortunately, those kids don't get to vote. And because they don't get to vote, they end up getting held back. In some cases, you have kids that'll get used for 6 years as a guinea pig. There's so much needs to be improved about this school setting. I don't believe any school in New York should have critical race theory in it or anything like that at all, because they come up with new names now where you're pitting one student against another student based off of who they are. These kids were getting along just fine before those teachers and that agenda came into the classroom. I also believe that a lot of the material that's in schools, just with regards to sex education, is just not age appropriate. I remember the experience of going through sex education classes when I was a kid. And kids are learning the material much younger than when we went to school. I believe that we should only have age-appropriate material, and if you have a kid who has questions, there's content that they need to speak to somebody about, that they should be able to have that conversation. I also believe that parents should be involved in that. It shouldn't be happening behind the back of parents. But some kids, they develop earlier. They might have questions earlier, and it might be in the best interest of the kid, because that's what's most important, for that kid to have that setting. But that doesn't mean that you have to expose, when the first kid in class comes up with the first question, that everybody else automatically needs to get exposed to that question and answer. So that's something that's important to me as well. We should have advanced academics, which there's a push right now to get rid of it in the name of equity. We need to overhaul the school aid formula in the state. There's a lot to do with education to improve it in New York.
So stepping back, what do you think, as you're traveling the state, you're talking to people, I'm looking at polling that really across the political spectrum, people think New York are on the wrong track. We're heading in the wrong direction. What's the number one issue that people are talking about? What's the greatest thing that you see that's broken in New York that a Zeldin administration could address?
Right now, the number one issue is crime. I also hear people talk about education and freedom and their wallets, the economy. These are all top issues. But just to be honest, the number one issue that I hear about is that people are not feeling safe outside of their homes. They don't feel like Albany is looking out for law enforcement, that they're handcuffing the justice system instead of handcuffing criminals. I believe that cashless bail should be repealed. The mayor in New York City says that judges should have discretion to weigh dangerousness. I agree with them. I believe that judges should have discretion to weigh dangerousness and flight risk and past criminal record and seriousness of the offense when deciding what the appropriate amount of bail is. I believe that district attorneys should enforce the law. I would fire Alvin Bragg on day one. He refuses to enforce the law, and the governor of the state of New York has the constitutional authority to remove a DA who refuses to enforce the law. I believe that less is more should be overturned. There's so much that's happening right now in our criminal justice system that is making our streets less safe. And we just have to put law-abiding citizens back in charge of their streets, the subways, museums, businesses, and elsewhere. It's actually not that difficult of an issue to solve. We know what to do. I picked as my running mate, I asked Allison Esposito to run, and she came out of law enforcement. She was the commanding officer of the 70th precinct in Brooklyn. She was on a trajectory like this. She would become a chief. Her father was a chief in the NYPD. And our team, and when I say our team, it is including congressional candidates and state Senate candidates and state assembly candidates, the whole statewide ticket, everybody, one team, top down, bottom up. We are all here about saving our state, saving our country. We want New Yorkers, anyone who comes to visit this state, to feel safe being able to walk our streets.
So, I'm listening to Governor Kathy Hochul, and she talked about when she came into office, there'd be collaboration and we'd work together. But, honestly, in my experience, I've seen nothing but top-down mandates that has come down, so I'm concerned about that. But honestly, even among Republicans, oftentimes members of the evangelical community get burned by Republican elected officials. If the people in my community are willing to trust you with their vote, what can they expect? One, how can they be sure that they're going to have confidence in that vote, you're going to do what you say you do? And second, what can they expect from that Zeldin administration?
Great thing is I have a voting record. And I also have people like the Reverend Jason McGuire, who knows me from years of being able to work together. So you're able to talk to people who you trust and say, okay, I heard about this guy, Zeldin. I heard that you met him. Tell me a little bit more about him. Or you can look at my voting record. So I am pro-life. I'm unapologetic about it. I will share my personal experience because that helped inform my perspective, but it also comes with a voting record. I could come into the House of Representatives and say that I want to strengthen the U.S.-Israel relationship, but in my fourth term now, as co-chair of the House Republican Israel Caucus, as one of two Jewish Republicans in Congress, having a record, it's a little bit easier on the number of issues that are really important to the evangelical community. They have gotten a chance to work with me, to know me, and I've been asked to cast that vote. At times, controversial votes, where you vote yay or nay. Other people, by the way, hide in the bathroom. Some people just don't even show up to vote at all. But time and again, I'm there, put my card in the machine, and vote my conscience. And I know that it's a record that I can be proud of in communicating with the evangelical community.
Well, Congressman, thank you for your time today. Certainly we'll be continuing to pray for you and your family and watching as this race unfolds throughout the rest of 2022.
All right, look forward to it. Thank you, Jason. Thank you for your leadership.
Well, I hope you were well informed by that interview with Congressman Lee Zeldin. It really is important that we know where the candidates stand on the issues, and Congressman Zeldin won't be the only candidate that we interview. The candidates are participating in a petition process right now because Governor Kathy Hochul and Congressman Lee Zeldin secured a high enough percentage at the nominating conventions, they don't have to petition to get on the ballot. They're already on there. But there are other candidates across the state that are petitioning to primary for the governor's race. On the Democratic side, there's Jumaane Williams and Tom Suozzi. The Republican side, there's Andrew Giuliani. You have Sheriff Carpinelli. You have Rob Astorino, Harry Wilson, Derek Gibson, maybe some others. And so as people are petitioning and they qualify, that will allow us to then sit down and have an interview with them as a qualified candidate for the primary ballot. So stay tuned for more of these coming in our speaker series as we look at these candidate spotlights. And speaking of elections, Tuesday, March 15th is an election day in many places across the state of New York. There are village elections, and every election matters. Every vote matters. Your vote matters. So I want to encourage you to come out and vote in those village elections. Many of the village races are going to come down to really single ballots. They will literally be decided by less than 10 votes in many places across the state of New York. And so please go vote in village elections today. And if you've thought about running for office, if you've thought about getting involved in a campaign at some level, Well, I want to also encourage you to think about coming out for our campaign school. We're holding our first ever campaign school on Friday, April 8th and Saturday, April 9th. The campaign school will be held at First Bible Baptist Church in Rochester, New York. And I want to encourage you to, if you've thought about running for office, to come on out for the campaign school. You can register through our website at albanyupdate.com or newyorkfamilies.org. And we'll see you at the campaign school on Friday, April 8th and Saturday, April 9th. Now we have two more issues to cover today. The third issue, legislatively, we're going to cover deals with our Preserving Religious Liberty agenda. You may not be aware of it, but there is an effort in New York to socialize medicine, to essentially take us out of private health insurance and put us in one government-run healthcare program. And that's just a terrible idea for the state of New York. It's bad medicine. And Stephen Hayford, a legislative director, has an update for us on that issue.
New Yorkers for Constitutional Freedoms supports policies that preserve religious liberty. For our 2022 Digital Day of Action, our religious liberty agenda is focused on blocking the proposed New York Health Act. The New York Health Act would kick every New Yorker off of his or her health insurance and impose a government-controlled program of socialized medicine upon the entire state. It is no exaggeration to say that this bill, if passed, would sound a death knell for the state of New York. There are many serious problems with the New York Health Act. The act is objectionable on pro-life grounds. It would incentivize government rationing of medical care and would leave high-cost patients with no alternatives if the government refused to provide coverage for their continuing treatment. Also, the massive tax increases needed to fund this proposal would be a fiscal nightmare and would motivate both employers and employees to flee the state in droves. The New York Health Act is also carelessly drafted. Instead of providing a real funding mechanism, the bill simply directs the governor to submit a revenue plan for a proposal that could double the New York state budget. This figure-it-out-later approach to funding an exorbitantly expensive program is unacceptable. Today, we focus on the religious liberty aspects of the New York Health Act. The New York Health Act would place state government in complete control of New Yorkers' health insurance by forcing employers, including some faith-based employers, to include abortion in their employee health insurance. New York government has already made its hostility to religious liberty quite clear. Under the New York Health Act, New Yorkers could expect more of the same. Government would likely pressure faith-based healthcare providers into engaging in acts that violate their beliefs, or leaving the healthcare field altogether. Do you want Christian doctors and faith-based hospitals to be pressured into performing abortions and so-called sex reassignment surgeries? It would be a simple matter for state government to impose such requirements under the New York Health Act. The state could refuse to pay any medical providers that do not knuckle under. The New York Health Act would endanger religious liberty here in the state of New York. It would also endanger human life. It must not be passed.
Stephen, thank you for that update. You know, if you're concerned about that issue, there are action items you can take. You'll be receiving those emails throughout the day today, but it's also available on our website at albanyupdate.com. You can get involved and you can help us stop socialized medicine in the state of New York. We're concerned not only for fiscal reasons, as Stephen laid out, but also those religious liberty concerns. So thank you for helping us to stop socialized medicine in this state. Now, our fourth issue of the day really revolves around that proclaiming justice and mercy agenda. And this is one that really is near and dear to a lot of folks that follow us, and it deals with helping moms on Medicaid. This bill would guarantee that moms on Medicaid would have a minimal hospital stay after giving birth to a child. Stephen Hayford, a legislative director, will tell us more about this particular piece of legislation.
New Yorkers for Constitutional Freedoms supports policies that promote the biblical concepts of justice and mercy. On the 2022 Digital Day of Action, the top priority on our justice and mercy agenda is the Medicaid coverage for post-childbirth hospitalization bill. This legislation would require Medicaid to cover at least 48 hours of inpatient hospital care for mothers and their newborn babies. For moms who have given birth via cesarean section, the bill would require coverage for a minimum of 96 hours of hospitalization. Under this bill, moms and babies who are discharged from the hospital before these time periods have expired would be entitled to coverage for a home care visit. The bill would also require that Medicaid's maternity care coverage include help for new moms in learning how to feed their babies. Existing law requires private insurance companies to cover hospital stays following childbirth. However, it does not require Medicaid to provide the same coverage. The proposed bill would give Medicaid recipients the same protections that are available to persons with private insurance coverage. The Medicaid coverage for post-childbirth hospitalization bill is important because it would help to prevent mothers and babies on Medicaid from having to leave the hospital for insurance reasons when they are not yet ready to return home. It would also promote the health and well-being of newborn babies by making it more likely for certain health problems to be observed and treated before babies leave the hospital. Passing this legislation is also a matter of justice, as families receiving Medicaid should not receive medical care that is inferior to the care received by families with private health insurance. The Medicaid coverage for post-childbirth hospitalization bill passed the New York State Senate on February 16, 2022. New Yorkers for Constitutional Freedoms respectfully calls upon the New York State Assembly to pass this common sense bill.
Hey, Stephen, thank you for that update. And again, today, there will be an email going out later today, but it's also available on our website at albanyupdate.com, where you can get involved, you can make a difference in helping those moms on Medicaid. You know, oftentimes in the pro-life community, people will say to us that you only care about babies until they're born, and then you don't, or you don't care about their moms. Well, frankly, we believe that we can love moms and their babies. And this bill is just an example of that, how we can help make sure that these moms and their young babies get a better start, even if they're starting out on that stay in Medicaid. So thank you for being involved and getting involved in this issue. You know, today's program had some technical issues in the live stream, so we've done some post-production work to make sure you receive the program in a form that is fitting. And there are many questions that have been posted as well today. And so I'll be posting responses to some of those questions in the days to come on our Facebook page at facebook.com/AlbanyUpdate. Thank you again for participating, for taking action on the items, for praying about the items that are before us today. And if you'd like to join that capital prayer call, you can sign up at albanyupdate.com/prayer. I'd encourage you to do that. And remember, we also have a fundraising goal today of $25,000 towards our work. You can give to that work at newyorkfamilies.org/donate. Thank you for participating in today's Digital Day of Action.